Hello, welcome back to B&J's Little Farm. How are you guys tonight? We are on Wings of a Dream. Hey Jen, good to see you. Brian, hello. Barrett's still outside, he's still working. He is finishing up the animals. I always forget to turn the volume down on my phone when I try to follow the chat. But yeah, he's still out feeding animals. I watered him tonight. He's feeding. So, what chapter did we leave off on? Chapter 34. Come on, phone. Okay, there we go. Chapter 34. Mama's account of Will's death arrived the Monday after the sheriff's and my awkward Saturday night visit in Frank's parlor. After a quiet Sunday with Frank and the children, tears streamed down my cheeks as I read the letter. Not that Mama had any real details to relay. He died as he wanted, in the midst of living. His friend had written that a woman in a Montana town they'd been visiting nursed him as his strength warned. They'd buried him at the foot of a mountain near a stream. Will, who had left Downingtown and seen the world, at least seen more of it than I had, would I trade his short life of experience for a long one of familiarity? Just a few months ago, I would have said yes. Now I'm not so sure. What's wrong? Irene stood in front of me, her voice full of sympathy. I lifted the corner of my apron to dry my face. It's Will. He's gone. Oh, honey. Irene led me to the sofa and pulled my head to her shoulder. You go on and cry now. It'll do you good to grieve. Her words broke something inside me like an overfull barrel bursting out its bands. Tears flowed, chest heavy, head and eyes ached, but I couldn't stop crying. She left me for a little while. I curled on the sofa and sobbed alone. Hey Vermont, hey Firefly, good to see you all coming in. Shoes scraped into the room and left again. I smelled Janie's freshly washed hair as she laid her cheek next to mine, held her until she wiggled free. It's hard to say goodbye. Irene handed me a warm cup of tea. Its sweetness teasing my nose. I do know how you feel, remember? Her sad smile hurt so much I had to look away. But I did remember. Her sister, tuberculosis. I reached for Irene's hand and gripped it tight. Thank you. I'll be praying for you, Rebecca, and your mama and daddy. But just Ryan in for a minute. I have to get home. Do you want me to send Ola Jean to help take care of things? I shook my head. I'm fine. I'll just take some getting used to, that's all. Irene glanced toward the barnyard. Remember, it's taken him some getting used to as well. I took a deep breath, my eyes meeting hers. He loved his wife. She laid a hand on my damp cheek, then sighed and moved away. It was hard on him watching her suffer, so he went away. Not like you think. He went because he was needed, even knowing it could likely leave his children orphaned. But the man trusts God more deeply than most, and he knew he had to go. Her words echoed the ones he'd spoken to me on the same subject, and I remembered his first letter to me about God knowing best, even in light of all the death in his life. In his children's lives, his faith shamed me. Irene took her leave, but turned back halfway down the walk. You know, I'm here if you need me. I nodded, thankful again that the Lord had sent me such a friend. Not an hour later, Ollie raced into the kitchen, threw her arms around my waist, and squeezed tight. Then she looked up at me, eyes swimming with tears. Daddy told me, she said. I'll miss Will too, Rebecca. My breath caught. Frank told her? Should he have done that? Hadn't she experienced enough sorrow without having to shoulder mine too? Irene found me on her way home. Frank leaned against the door jamb, blocking the afternoon sun. I'm so sorry. The lines in his face looked deeper now, as if he'd aged 6 years in 60 minutes. In 6 minutes. Yet another reminder of his own grief. Emotion flickered across his face too quickly for me to decipher. Thank you. I didn't know what else to say. I can do that if you want me to. He nodded toward supper warming on the range, his gaze steady on my face. My stomach somersaulted and my cheeks warmed. Rebecca. Sheriff Jeffries broke the spell. He crossed the room and took my hand in his. I'm so sorry about Will. A quick glance to Frank. Why don't you come for a drive? It'll do you good. Frank wouldn't meet my eyes now. He simply took my place by the stove. Go on. I pulled the apron from over my dress, smoothed back my hair, but something in me didn't want to leave Frank behind. Not now. Hey, Tom. Good to see you. Hey, Brian. I don't know if I said hi or not, but good to see you. Thank you all for coming in. Yet Henry Jeffries' eyes implored me, and it didn't feel right to decline. I bit my lip, looking back at Frank one last time, wanting him to read the I'm sorry in my eyes, but he didn't turn from his task. He thought my being here would help him, but maybe I just brought more pain into his life. Yeah, you did make it. Woohoo! I hope you're getting rest. 2 days later, the ah-ooga of a car horn hit my ears long before a topless automobile came into sight. I ran to the fence, eager for normal conversation. Frank and I had avoided each other since I learned of Will's death, each cocooned in our own grief. Janie toddled after me, finally grabbing at my skirt to steady her new steps. Mr. Culpepper pulled back his goggles and grinned. Decided to give my horse a rest. What do you think? Slept until 1. Awesome. I ran my hand along the edge of the door. I think it's fine, Mr. Culpepper. Your mail route won't take half the time now, will it? His belly shook with laughter. Don't know about that, but it sure makes for a fun ride. He reached into the pocket of his jacket. Telegram for you, Miss Rebecca. Excitement leaked away as my hands covered my churning stomach. My tongue passed over my lips as I tried to reach for the envelope. Finally, my fingers obeyed. Thank you, Mr. Culpepper. Our eyes met. His turned away first. Howdy do, Frank, he called over me. Bring those little ones over here to see my new toy. Frank's gaze met mine, compassion spilling from the deep blue depths. I blew out a big breath and stumbled around to the backside of a pecan tree with a trunk for support. I slit open the envelope and pulled out the sheet of paper. Mama misses you. We arrive tomorrow, Daddy. Uh-oh. I breathed a prayer of thanks. Mama was all right. Then Daddy's words hit me. They would be here tomorrow. I pushed away from the sturdy tree and stumbled forward. A hand caught my elbow. I cried out and looked up. Concern wrinkled Frank's face, clear as the tickler tape on my telegram. What's wrong? His forehead creased as his eyebrows drew together. It's Mama. I croaked the words like an old bullfrog. His face crunched into deeper solitude. I sucked in a deep breath of thick, cold air and blew it out again, long and slow. She and Daddy arrive tomorrow. Your parents are coming? That's what it says. I read the telegram again. Mama misses me, I guess. Did you ask them to come? He said it like an accusation. No, and yet, why shouldn't I have? We just lost my brother. Would it have been so terrible of me to ask them to visit? Frank paced in front of me, murmuring, raking his hands through his hair. It's just, it feels a bit awkward. I mean, the two of us here, and he shrugged. I shoved my fist on my hips. That hasn't seemed to bother you until now. Besides, it isn't as if either of us have any intentions toward the other, even if his touch did ignite a lightning bolt inside me. No intentions. He stood still now, not even a twitch of movement. I just didn't want them to misconstrue in our current arrangement. All right, Tom, you have a good one. Thanks for coming in. Just want to take a second to wish all the awesome folks here a great weekend. Well, thank you. Right back at you, Tom. Are you suggesting they're coming to pressure you into marrying me? I snorted out a laugh. Don't worry. I have very different plans for my life. Yes, you've made that very clear. He towered over me, our eyes locked in a silent battle. If only we were fighting on the same side. But I don't want to go to bed, Becca. The whine in Dan's voice brought a pucker to my lips, as if I'd sipped lemonade with no sugar. Frank and James hadn't returned from milking old Bob yet. Ollie stood in the kitchen drying dishes. Janie already slept peacefully in her crib upstairs. Let's go, little man. I'm not your little man, and you can't make me. His eyebrows scrunched down over his eyes and his fingers curled into fists. Oh, yes, I can. I lifted him up off the floor, his feet kicking out behind me. What are you doing to him? Ollie blocked my way out of the kitchen. I'm taking him to bed. Her eyes narrowed. You're not his mother, you know. How many times had I said those words to her over the past few weeks? And she dared throw them back at me now? Neither are you. I set Dan on the ground, but kept his hand imprisoned in mine. Ollie's eyes flashed. When are you going home, Rebecca? Ollie, Elizabeth. Frank stood at the kitchen door, James at his side. Ollie's face paled. But Daddy, she... Get on up to bed. We'll talk about this in the morning. Ollie darted from the room, dragging Dan with her. James tugged at my hand. I knelt down in front of him. You're not going anywhere, are you? His bottom lip trembled. No. I ran my hand through his blonde curls. I won't leave you, sweet boy. I promise. He lurched into my arms, nearly knocking me to the ground. Tears gruffled my voice as I whispered, Let's get you tucked in, too. His head nodded against my shoulder. I carried him from the room without so much as a glance at his daddy. My heart couldn't bear to know whose side Frank had taken, Ollie's or James. Chapter 35. Will your mama like me? James distracted me for the 100th time. While I swept the floor, I assured him again that she would, although my heart fluttered in my chest every time I said it. Who knew what Mama would think? My stomach rolled and my breath heavied, and so I worked harder. But late afternoon, I paced the front walk, twisting my good lace handkerchief beyond recognition. Frank reminded me in the fields well beyond my sight. Frank remained in the fields well beyond my sight. Bedding up for planting, he told me, and already more than a month behind. What would Mama say when she saw him here? And what would Frank say when he realized I hadn't told my parents he had come home? I ripped my thoughts from that conundrum and focused again on the children. If only the boys would stay clean until Mama arrived. She needed to see them at their best right off. The chug-a-lug of a car drifted on the breeze. I leaned over the fence. Dan held open the small gate with his body. Ollie slipped her hand into mine as James whispered, They're here, they're here. The same excited terror that turmoiled his voice accelerated my heart. I drank in fresh air and pasted a smile on my face. I had no idea what Mama would think or what Mama looked like after her debilitating bout with the Spanish flu. But I prepared myself for the worst. Mr. Culpepper had hardly stopped the automobile when Daddy jumped out. He reached for Mama's hand. She set a tentative foot on the brown grass at the edge of the road. Mama, paler, thinner, softer somehow. What had done that to her? The influenza or losing her firstborn? She opened her arms and I ran into them, our tears mingling on pressed together cheeks. Then she held me away from her. Let me look at my baby. I wore a real smile now, pulling back my shoulders so I wouldn't be scolded to stand up straight. You look fine. She cocked her head to the right. More grown up, I think. She sighed and looked away. Daddy stood on the porch, an old basil hanging from his hand. The air's cooling off fast. Let's get her inside. James tugged on Mama's sleeve. Her eyebrows raised in a look I knew meant disapproval. James cocked his arm like a gentleman, ready to escort her up the walk. I held my breath. Mama's expression didn't change right away, but then her censure melted. With a prim smile, she wrapped her hand around James's small elbow. I closed my eyes and breathed a quick prayer of relief. 1 down, 3 to go. Daddy kissed my cheek as I walked past. Mama stepped through the door behind me. What a charming little house. Little house? I wanted to laugh. This house wasn't any smaller than ours in Downingtown, but I let the comment pass. And now, Rebecca, why don't you introduce me to the welcoming party? I placed my hand on James's head. You've met James. Mama tilted her head in acknowledgement. This is Dan. I nudged him forward. I'm 4. He held up 5 fingers and folded down his thumb with the opposite hand. Ollie fidgeted, her hands on Janie's shoulders in front of her. I laid my hand on Ollie's head. This is Ollie Elizabeth and little Janie. Beautiful girls. Mama's words sounded strangled and silted, and the look on her face, now the color of ash, made my stomach tumble. She put her hand on Daddy's arm. You've had a long day, Mama. Do you want to rest before supper? Mama waved her hand. Of course, we'll eat your good supper. We've about starved. You can't eat a bite while the train's moving all around like that. Daddy grimaced. He looked older than I remembered and thinner. James, take the suitcase to your Mama's bedroom. Ollie helped me put dinner on the table. Dan, take care of Janie. I looked to see if Mama approved of how I handled the children, but she didn't seem to notice. Instead, she fussed with her handbag and frowned. Oh well, she was tired. Besides, I didn't need her to tell me I'd done well. I knew I had. In the kitchen, I opened the oven door, intensifying the sweet smell of the sugar-crusted ham. Potatoes sat soft in the water, ready to be beaten and buttered and salted and peppered. The biscuits went into the oven as soon as I removed the ham. Rebecca? Mama's voice nearby. Then the click of the kitchen door. I whipped around. Mama and Frank stared at each other, red rising in both of their faces. Who's this? Mama's voice, barely more than a whisper. Frank's features turned hard as if carved from a stone. Frank Gresham? He glanced at me, then back to Mama. I assume you are Mrs. Hendricks? Mama turned fiery eyes in my direction. I see you know who I am, but I haven't been given the same consideration. I backed away, not wanting to be caught in the middle of the twister I'd created. Ah! Hot metal seared my skin. I grabbed my hand, doubled over, Mama and Frank beside me, one voice in each ear, pain blinding my sight. Margaret, Rebecca, Daddy! I felt Mama and Frank move back. Daddy led me to the table as my screen drifted away. We'll need eggs and some clean cotton. Mama, taking charge as usual. I have butter and flour right here, Frank. We aren't making a cake. We're dressing a burn. I realize that. Butter, then flour. My mother swore by it. It really hurts. I leaned my head into Daddy's shoulder. I know, baby. Let me see. He eased open my hand and studied the raised red splotch on my palm. Frank arrived at the table first. He cradled my hand in his. I whimpered. Hush now, a gentle whisper. Let me do that. Mama pressed her fingers into the pristine G atop the newly pressed butter and lathered it on my skin. Go on now. Let me do my work. Mama scooted beside me. Daddy led Frank from the room, and Mama wrapped a clean rag around my greasy hand and tied the ends together. Thank you, Mama. I reached up and kissed her cheek. Hey, Steve. Good to see you. Moments later, Daddy was there, leading her away. Let's rest a while, Margaret. He looked back at me. Supper will wait. I nodded. Then Frank stood over me, his eyes more gray than blue. I'm sorry. I fiddled with the end of the bandage. His face crumpled in confusion. Why? You didn't mean to burn yourself. No. I smoothed the folds of the rag around my hand. Not that. I'm sorry I didn't tell Mama you were home. You what? His voice rose but then fell, as if he remembered the need for quiet. Mama didn't know you'd come home. My teeth held my bottom lip as I watched him jump up and cross the room, his hands combing through his hair before resting atop his head. He blew out a long breath, his gaze pinning me still. And just when were you going to inform her of my presence in my own house, I might add? I hadn't quite figured that out yet, but she knew now. On my feet, I swayed a bit. He reached my side in an intense, that little boy look softening his face. I pressed my lips together, holding in the sudden urge to laugh. I imagine we need to get supper finished. He shook his head and led me to the stove. As hard as he tried to hide it, I spied the corners of his mouth fighting to hold a frown. While Daddy blessed the food, I prayed in my head, asking God to help me be patient with Mama and she with me. Then voices quieted while dishes clinked and clacked. I filled and refilled glasses with water and milk and coffee. A while later, Daddy sat back and patted his stomach. That was what I call larping good, baby girl. Daddy's Texas roots always comes out that way after a meal he enjoyed. I glanced at Frank. Had he thought I'd done well too? I couldn't read his expression. Mama dabbled her napkin at the corners of her mouth. I noticed she'd only picked at the food on her plate, and yet she'd claimed she hadn't eaten much on her journey. I tried to catch Daddy's eye, to ask him my silent question, but he didn't or wouldn't look my way. Shouldn't these children be running off to bed, Mama said. Frank's fingers tightened around his fork, and his chest puffed out. I think they can stay up a little longer, Mama. I kept my tone light. The sun's hardly gone to bed itself. And anyway, this isn't a special occasion. Mama's eyebrows rose, first at Frank and then at me. I pretended not to notice and hoped Frank would do the same. James and Ollie scraped the plates into the slop barrel. I said it low, hoping to avoid Mama's ears. But very little escaped Mama, even in her somewhat altered state. You mean to let these children handle this fine china by themselves? Their Mama's china? I wanted to answer back, something they held near sacred, but I swallowed down my temper. They'll be careful. I turned to them. Won't you? They nodded back, all eyes. Mama, why don't you let Daddy take you to the parlor? We'll get some of this put away and join you in a few minutes. Won't we, Frank? Never before had I suggested a course of action to Mama. She always did the suggesting. I held my breath, waiting to see what she would do, and if Frank would respond. Daddy didn't give Mama a chance to react. He took her arm and led her from the room. Frank picked up 2 plates. You managed that nicely. Thank you. I picked up a half-full pitcher of milk with my uninjured hand. He cleared his throat. Your mother is a bit overbearing. I carried the milk into the kitchen, set it in the cooler. He followed behind. You'll have to let me in on your secret if we're all going to survive her visit. Survive whose visit? James piped up. Frank looked like he'd been caught eating dessert before dinner. You and Ollie bring the rest of the dishes. The 2 of them scampered from the room. I burst out laughing and covered my mouth with my unbound hand. Frank looked stricken. Then he grinned and handed me a dish towel. I'll wash, you dry. We'll get this cleaned up in no time. We fell to work side by side, and it felt so right. Last chapter of tonight. It's chapter 36. We're almost to the end, you guys. We only have a few more to go. Chapter 36. Never in my life had I imagined one person could cause so much disruption to a household. Whatever the influenza had done to weaken Mama's body, it had infected her tongue. You shouldn't let down Ollie's dress. It's too short. You should let down Ollie's dress. It's too short. Janie whined at my skirt. I lifted her into my arms. You're spoiling that child. Let her cry. She's big enough to know better. She's not even a year old, Mama, and her mama's dead. I think I can hold her when she cries. I shouted the words in my head, and even though Mama couldn't hear, it felt good to answer back. I put on the sweetest smile I could muster. Janie watched my face and did the same. Why don't you stay out here on the porch and enjoy the nice morning, Mama? Mama pulled her shawl closer around her shoulders. It's too cold out here. We'd best get inside. I wanted to walk around the back door to enjoy just a few minutes away from her, but one look at the front steps and I knew she'd have trouble with them on her own. I reached her side in a few strides, steadying her as she lifted her foot to the first riser. I can do it, she snapped. I pulled my hand away, but didn't leave. She teetered just a bit. Then she clutched at my arm before taking the next step up. Without a word, she shuffled across the porch, into the hall, and past the parlor. Letting go of my arm, she entered the bedroom and closed the door behind her. No thanks, no apology. At least the boys and the men got to leave the house. I balanced Janie on my hip. Let's find Daddy. I'd bet he's down with old Bob. Janie didn't care if I meant her daddy or mine. The barn smelled of horse and mules and manure. Dust twirled in the weak streams of winter sunshine slithering through the cracks between the wall planks. My heart jumped and twirled as well, but settled fast when Frank didn't appear. Had he needed to go further than the barn for some peace? Daddy stood up from beneath old Bob, his arms stretched toward the roof of the barn as his back curved into a long arch. Thank you, Daddy. I kissed him on the cheek. He grunted in reply and patted old Bob's rump before he shut the stall and handed me the bucket of warm milk. But I wasn't ready to return to the house yet. I leaned against the barn door watching Daddy work. He drew the boys into each task, Janie too. His big finger tickled her beneath her chin and brushed one of her golden curls from her chubby face. Daddy, I put the milk pail on a nearby stool. He faced me, more pain in his eyes than I had ever seen there before. Tell me what's really wrong, Daddy. His jaw clenched, visible even in the half-light. Over the course of my life, I never had an intimate conversation with my father, but I always felt closer to him than Mama. Maybe I didn't feel the need to try so hard to please him. I wasn't sure. All I knew was that I needed him to talk to me now. He slipped his hand into his pockets. It's been difficult for your mother, you know. It hurt her for your brother to go off like that. She wanted to be with him at the end. As hard as it would have been, you know, she hasn't been strong since October. He glanced in the direction of the children, but they paid us no mind, running and shrieking from corner to corner. Losing her sister was grievous for her, too. I hadn't expected him to say that. I slipped my thumbnail between my teeth and clamped down until it snapped. I brushed it away and picked up one of the barn cats, a striped one, and stroked it until it purred. Mama wouldn't even come help her sister, so how could her death have brought grief? But Mama never even talked to her, or at least not for a long time. Daddy rubbed the back of his neck. Well, Annabelle left Downingtown. Your mama hurt real bad. She didn't know much about the man her little sister married, and she felt responsible for her after their father left. Janie toddled toward the barn door, squealing with delight. I captured her, swung her up in the air. She giggled in my arms. I smacked a kiss on her lips and directed her tottering steps toward the back wall instead. What do you mean? I never heard anything about her daddy leaving. No, you wouldn't have. He picked up a rake and started to spread fresh hay in Dandy's empty stall. Frank must have taken the horse out. His leaving shamed her. Annabelle running away with a stranger did the same thing. Then we got the news her husband had died, and Annabelle went to work caring for other people's houses, other people's families, instead of coming home to her own. His hands rested one on top of the other as he leaned into the rake handle. Your mama's a good woman, Rebecca, but a proud one. She doesn't like to show when she's hurt. His eyes found mine. It might look like anger, but it's really hurt. Hey, Darren, good to see you. I'm well. I hope you are too. He resumed his work. Now, her boy's gone too. I put my hand on his arm. But he was your boy too. Are you saying it doesn't feel the same for you? The agony that colored his smile pierced my heart like a needle through silk. You raise your kids, know you see fit, and hope for the best. But you can't know what's going to happen, and you can't change it when it does. It's painful, but life goes on. It was the most I've heard my daddy say at one time. I chewed on his words, understanding them far better now than I would have before. Poor Mama. She didn't like having those she loved grow up and make their own decision, live their own lives. Even Will, who'd done almost everything she wanted him to, disappointed her in the end. Maybe I could be more patient with her now that I understand. Want milk in your tea, Mama? She told me long ago it was how the English took their tea. I don't know how she knew, but she let me drink it that way when I was just a girl, when Santa Claus brought me a tea set for Christmas. A real china pot with matching cups and saucers, but tiny. Mama sat with me that afternoon, her hands trading work for play. I hope my words would spark some remembrance of that time. Are you making cornbread again? Yesterday's resolve to be patient wilted like a morning glory in the afternoon heat. I set the cup of tea in front of her and glanced at the almost flat sack of flour in the corner, next to the fat sack filled with cornmeal. Yes, Mama, I am. The batch this morning was too dry. Add more milk this time. I slammed a pot onto the range and waited for her to scold, but she didn't. Is that an automobile I hear? She hurried to the window as if the car held her dearest friend. Over her head, I could see a cloud of dust surrounding a familiar Model T. I waited for my heart to leap into my throat. Instead, my stomach dropped to the floor. Would Mama latch onto him or freeze him with her silent stare? Either prospect rattled me. I blew out a long breath. It's Sheriff Jeffries. The sheriff? Horror colored her words. What's he doing here? I dusted off my hands, removed my apron. He's a friend, that's all. She whirled around, eyes narrowed. That man's friend or yours? Before I could answer, the sheriff stood in the doorway, hat twirling in his hands. Rebecca? Mama's lips twisted into the kind of encouragement I'd come to dread. Sheriff Jeffries? I cringed at the disappointment of his face. After all, just last week I'd called him Henry. Please meet my mama, Margaret Hendricks. How do you do, Miss Hendricks? His hat whirled faster. I grabbed it and sat it on the table. His hands fumbled for some other occupation. I'm sorry for your loss, Miss Hendricks. Y'all have been in our prayers. Mama's lips flattened. I noticed tight lines at their edges. I'd been waiting for her to mention Will, but she hadn't. I guess she didn't want to discuss her grief. Either that or Frank's presence has distracted her from it. What brings you by today, Sheriff? I prayed he'd say business of some kind. A flush creeped up his neck. I came to see if you wanted to go for a drive, Rebecca. His gaze skittered to Mama now, as if seeking her approval. Her face brightened. Dinner's almost ready, Sheriff. Why don't you stay and eat? After dinner, we'd love to take a drive. I wanted to sink through the floor. Yes, please stay. Dinner and the drive took ages, or at least it seemed ages. The sun was on its way down when the sheriff left Mama and me back at the front gate. Thank you for dinner, ma'am. He tipped his hat to Mama, even though I was the one who prepared the meal. Then his eyes swept over me before he cranked the engine once more. We'll look forward to seeing you at church, Sheriff. Mama raised her arm to wave. I stepped back to avoid the dust. Poor Henry. He didn't deserve to be rope-tugged at both ends by Mama and me. As he walked back to the house, I wondered again if he was the man God had planned for me. Mama liked Sheriff Jeffries, even if she didn't yet know that his dream would carry us even further from her than Prater's Junction. And Henry was a sight more interesting than old Barney Graves. But could I sacrifice my own happiness for Mama's? Was that the kind of faith God wanted me to have? I glanced at Mama. She frowned at James, carrying into our path, jabbering like a magpie. Did you see me, Becca? Daddy said I ran faster than the Kaiser from Uncle Sam. Frank followed close behind, arms filled with his smallest son and daughter, all tottering alongside. My heart surged like a horse in a full gallop, and I could find no desire to rein it in. That was 3 chapters, you guys, for tonight. We'll be on chapter 37 next Saturday. I hope you enjoyed. We just got a few more chapters. I'm kind of sad it's ending. We got, let's see, 6 in the house. I got 10 thumbs up. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you all for coming out on your Saturday to read along with me. I hope you enjoyed the storyline. If you have any questions, go ahead. You can ask me. I'll stay on here for just a few more minutes. I know people have been asking a lot of questions, so if you have any, you can ask. And there are no piggies and piglets in the book. No, there wasn't. Thank you, Darren. Brian says I enjoyed it. Awesome. Vermont says enjoyed. Thank you so much for staying in here, Vermont. I appreciate it. I did put out a short earlier today. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. But there's piglets at your place. Yes, I put up a short for you, Firefly. Did you watch it? Brian says, excited to see the new piglets. Me too, super excited. So, I did get the new breeder piglets. I got a boy and a girl, a boar and a gilt. So, I believe they're both from 2 different litters. One's a lot smaller, which is the boar. So he's from one litter, and then the female, the gilt, she's from another litter, and she's much bigger. So hopefully he'll catch up with her pretty soon. Fireflies that I watched. They're super skittish right now. I love getting these pigs from the person that I get them from, you guys. He's consistent. I always know that he'll have them and stuff. You know, I've waited, it's been 2 years. 2 years since I've had piglets, so I'm really relieved, and I feel so much better knowing that they're here. But the conditions that the pigs come from, I wouldn't say are the best. They are basically in, I don't know, a 4x8 stall, a barn, and it's just a hog barn, so that's all that's in there. And then the sows that they have are individually in each stall, and then the piglets basically just run around in this stall that they put them in. But they don't see sunlight, they've never seen grass, anything like that. So when I get them, it's really super exciting because I raise mine out on the grass and stuff. So when I get them and release them, or Barrett releases them into the pen, it's literally the first time that they've ever seen grass or been outside. So it's really exciting to watch them and explore and see these new things. So because everything's so new to them, and plus the car ride, the truck ride is kind of long. That's kind of scary too, I would imagine. So they just have like all this new curiosity and learning these new things and eating new things. It's just really fun to watch. I tried to get in there with them a little bit ago. I gave them some fresh water and everything and try to get them used to me, and they're like, nope. They're like in the old pig lot right now. And the weeds are super grown up because nothing's been in there forever. So they're basically hiding in the weeds underneath. Every time I walk out, they won't come out. They're just hiding under the weeds. I'm like, oh my gosh, come out and see me. They won't do it. So hopefully a couple of days them getting used to the place and getting used to me, they'll come out and be okay. They'll be rooting it up too. I imagine by tomorrow afternoon they'll have that whole lot rooted up so they can't hide from me. So we'll see. They're going to be happy. Yeah, they will. Thank you. Mega shout out to Wild Edible. She shared me out. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yeah, they'll definitely eat the way out of the weeds. So that's awesome. Oh, another update too is, so Barrett's been working on that lawnmower the last couple of hours, and there was some suggestions that it might be the points on the lawnmower or carburetor. There's a couple of things, but he ended up, I don't know what he did. He took the gas out of it and blew out the lines and everything, and he said it was so full of dirt in the gas line, and knock on wood, it's running now. So we'll see. Hopefully it'll stay running and good. But yeah, super excited about the piggies. And then of course my baby chicks hatched out. I did a short of that earlier, and I went and picked them up as well. We just basically did a big huge circle around town so that we didn't have to backtrack. So we got up at 7 o'clock and we're on the road by 7:30. Picked the piglets up first, then the baby chicks. Then we did a meat grocery haul. I didn't do a video or anything. We were so worn out, you guys. So we did the meat grocery haul. And then, of course, we had to go pick up hog food and our monthly allotment of feed for all the other animals. By the time we got home, it was like 12 o'clock, 12:30 or something. It was probably like 12. And by the time we got the birds put away, the pigs put away, and everything done, it was probably 1:30. I lay down, I passed out again until like 4:30. I was super exhausted. And then basically back up again and did all the animal chores again. Our days are just going super fast. So in the baby chicks that hatched out, we've got the Polish crested, you know, Barrett's fancy birds. I think there was like 2 or 3 of those that hatched out. And then I had the Lavender Orpingtons hatch out and some Americanas. And it's kind of hard to tell between the Americanas and the Lavender Orpingtons because they're both the lavender color or blue, whatever you want to call them, gray. They've both got the same type of feathers. So I'm going to have to wait until they're just a little bit older to be able to tell which is which is kind of funny. We'll see. I guess that's it. That's really, I mean, that was a full packed day of running and errands and animals. We'll sleep good tonight for sure. It rained off and on all day. We got caught in the rain yesterday butchering the chickens, and then today we got caught in the rain twice picking up the pigs and then picking up the baby chicks. I'm like, seriously. So hopefully we'll have some nice warm weather tomorrow without any rain. I don't know. They're calling for rain for the next 2 weeks here, so I hope not. The weathermen are liars. That's all they do is lie. I can check the weather by like every hour and it's changed. It's ridiculous. But yeah, it's still calling for rain tomorrow, so we'll see. But I looked at the forecast yesterday and it said rain every day for 2 weeks. I'm like, no! Like, the garden needs it. It really does, and I appreciate the rain, but 2 weeks? That's a long time. I'm tapping holes in broken buckets, planting tomatoes. Awesome. Yeah, I heard on the news today it was supposed to rain really hard in New York. I heard that on the radio today. Brian said it rained here also. It's going to dump here. Yeah. I mean, we need it, but I don't think we need 2 weeks of it. My lettuce in the garden, the lettuce that, I can't even think of my words right now. My volunteer lettuce, the lettuce that I separated and replanted, it was pretty sad looking, and when we basically drove around the property to drop off the pigs. I stopped and looked at the lettuce. Some of it survived, some of it wilted up and just shriveled up and died, but some of that rain really helped the lettuce, so we'll see. There was like 47 lettuce plants, so not a big deal. And plus, like I said, it was just a volunteer. They were all volunteer lettuce, so. But I love that lettuce. We've got a little lettuce box, and I've shown it on a short. I harvested spinach from it the other day, but there's like a little whatever box I'm growing in. I can't ever, cold weather box. It's got lettuce and spinach in it, and after the rain, the lettuce that's in that box just like boomed out. I don't know. It was crazy. I looked at that today and I'm like, ooh, we're going to have some wilted lettuce soon. I don't know if you guys remember or not the wilted lettuce I made last year. I was so addicted to it. Every time I harvested lettuce last year, I made wilted lettuce. It was so good. So I'm just waiting for that lettuce to get just a tiny bit bigger so it's enough for 2 salads, or enough for both Bear and I. And then I'll be making that wilted lettuce. Cold frame, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Wild. That was way too big of a bite, sorry. I love wilted lettuce salad. Mom-in-law taught me, yeah, it's so good. Kitty. Yeah, these cats are on my last nerves, waking me up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Darren says, I'm doing a live Sunday evening at 7 p.m. You're all welcome to come in and chat. I will get mods to put your channel links up Sunday. Alright, awesome, Darren. I will keep an eye out. Have you set the live up yet? Let me know if you set up the live so I can like hit the notification. Hopefully, like I said though, it doesn't rain tomorrow, and I'll get to put some more plants in the ground. We haven't planted for 2 days now because yesterday we did the chicken butcher and today we picked up animals, so we haven't been working in the garden for the two days. We got to catch up. Yes, okay. Upcoming, I see it now. Alright, I put my notification on. It better notify me. I'm like, I don't know, I get ADHD or something going on. I get so busy or wrapped up in doing something. I say I'm being alive and stuff, and then I always forget. I don't do it on purpose. It's just life. I get busy. So hopefully I'll get that notification and I can at least come in and say hi and support. The rabbits are doing good. They're fine. That's another thing. I need to start butchering rabbits too, because we got 2 rabbits that should be producing babies soon. So the older rabbits got to go and the newer rabbits got to come. But they're doing good. I said 2 rabbits we got to butcher. We got 3. There's 3 of them we got to get done. Because you remember that male I got as a buck? He was supposed to be my breeder, and then he has the tooth that grows super long. He needs to go too. I haven't butchered him yet. Oh, I gotta get those chickens out of the fridge and into the freezer too. I'm working on the stockpiling of the freezer, you guys. It's good people friendly chat only. That's awesome. I'm going to stay on for just a couple more minutes. If you have any more questions or concerns or anything like that, let me know. Like I said, I'll stay on just a couple more minutes. I got to get back outside and collect eggs, because I didn't do that yet tonight. I got to collect eggs, and I have to get those chickens in the freezer. Definitely more piggy videos coming soon. I gave them a couple cucumbers tonight and they were like, They ran and hid. The new freezer is on the front porch of the farmhouse, Firefly. We were talking about that today. There's a covered porch, that it's under and everything, but Barrett was talking, we need to find some type of freezer cover. I don't know. Do they make freezer covers? Some type of cloth or something we can put over top of it. I'm filling water buckets. It sounds great, friend. You work hard and have the energy. Ugh. I do work hard, but I don't know about the energy part. I take lots of naps, Darren. Lots of naps. Alright, you guys, if there's no more questions, I'm going to hop off here. I just finished my dinner. I'm going to get back outside. And don't forget, Darren's going live tomorrow. If you haven't checked him out, go check him out. Go send him some love and support. And don't forget, Monday night reset at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do too. Nothing wrong with the nap. Agree. Yeah, I'm barefoot. I've been barefoot almost all day. Alright, you guys, you have a great evening. Thank you, Brian. You too. Take care of Mama Lloyd. And you guys, remember, you're not alone. You are loved. Stay happy, healthy, and safe. And I'll see you Monday evening. Bye. You're welcome, Darren.